right. It is my pleasure to welcome none other than Kent Halliburton to the channel. Kent is the president and COO of Sazmining. Kent, welcome, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, super stoked to be here, man. It's been fun the last few months getting to know Joltz and you specifically, Ian.
Yes, indeed. Well, let's jump into it as we often do. I would love to hear just a little bit more about your Genesis story. How did you get into Bitcoin? How did you get it to where you are now?
Yeah, I think everybody's Genesis story is a bit unique. Mine I think also falls into the exotic category. So I the first half of my career was in rooftop solar. So I worked in that career up until approximately 2014 for about a decade and just suffered some burnout and a change of leadership happened and decided, it's a good time to fulfill another lifelong dream, which is go see the world. So I took a couple years sabbatical, and along the way, I bumped into a woman who would become my wife, and bumped into Bitcoin about the same time in Peru. And this
Okay.
is circa 2015. And by the time the dust settled in 2016, I was married in Portugal, starting a family, and living off of the proceeds from a Bitcoin run, the Bitcoin run of 2016, 17, right?
Right.
So obviously was completely enthralled having lived through that experience, hung out a shingle as an entrepreneur in Portugal and not knowing the language or business requirements, red tape for doing anything Bitcoin related. I sort of kept slamming my head into a brick wall. So, for a lot of folks that have heard about Portugal, wonderful if you are an investor, hold Bitcoin, other crypto assets, but not so good if you're trying to run a business there.
Mm.
There's just horrible red tape and lack of clarity. So as a result of sort of stubbing my toe enough times trying to get things going there, I decided to lean back into my energy background after reading Jeff Booth's The Price of Tomorrow.
It's a good one.
And at this point too, I'd gone through what I like to call the the shitcoin hall of mirrors that I think all of us have to manage to traverse and find the exit to. And ultimately, the exit is this bright orange doorway called Bitcoin. And you realize
Right.
that that was actually the door, the entrance as well. And so I made that journey, tried my hand at everything and every which way to acquire Bitcoin while I was in this time period. And so as a result, after reading Price of Tomorrow, thinking about my rooftop solar background, I said I'd really need to get into the mining sector. And Will, the founder, he was on a solar podcast. I knew the host, and this brings us up to like December of 2020, so kind of lockdown COVID environment,
Yep.
and reached out. Will and I hit it off pretty big, and I jumped into to helping out here at Sazmining as an energy advisor, and one thing has led to another, and now I'm Will is actually in all his wisdom. He's a few years younger than me. Just realized like, hey, Kent's actually better at running this than I am at this point in my life, and I need to get a bit more experience. So here, take the reins, Kent. And that just happened last week. So now I've moved into full leadership for the organization, which is fun and exciting. I mean, early stage startup, that just means that you get to both swab the bathrooms
Right.
as well as cook the meals, right? So
That's right.
it's kind of a jack of all trades. But yeah, it's a fun role to have, and really, it's nice to do something that I feel passionate about. Coming from rooftop solar, I think this is surprising for a lot of Bitcoiners to hear. The rooftop solar is the only analogous industry to Bitcoin mining I've come across. And that is going to sound odd to people, but rooftop solar is also distributed, decentralized, and disruptive, and the profits are constrained by an energy network.
Interesting.
Does that sound anything like Bitcoin mining to you?
Think you're onto something. No, I love that. Well, congrats, Kent. That's hot off the press, and I think as part of that, you've seen probably quite a lot. It's been an interesting couple of years for the mining industry. So maybe talk a little bit about that. Like from your perspective, what are you seeing right now in the industry? I mean, hash rate's just been relentlessly, ripping throughout this bear market. We're obviously approaching the impending halving next year. What's your kind of high level view of what's happening, and what are maybe some predictions as we head into next year?
Yeah. So before providing any of the answers to that, let me just say that I am horribly biased, right? As a miner, I've got skin in the game, both
Right.
working. Or my family holds Bitcoin. all these things are true, right? So you're going to have to take what I say with a grain of salt. But I think of myself less of a Bitcoin maximalist and more of a 4-year price cycle maximalist. I
Okay.
don't know by what alchemical process it occurs, but going into this is my third halving that I've lived through. And every time the same conversations occur
Yeah.
and nobody believes there's about a split 50-50. It's not going to happen again. The market's too smart.
Right.
And it's happened twice, and I've just become convinced that it's going to happen a third time because it's become a self-fulfilling prophecy, the Nakamoto engine here. So that said, I think that there's two ways to interpret the hash rate increase this year, and my bias show as to what I believe is true here. But the hash rate increase has broken its cycle, right? It has loosely followed the 4-year price cycle of Bitcoin until the last year or so. Seems to have gone a completely different path since the China ban of 2020. Now, my read on that is that it is an indicator to predict what's going to happen to Bitcoin's price. And so I am anticipating large price movements. I refuse to give numbers for that because I think it's sort of absurd. It just seems I'm just mega bullish for what happens.
Yep.
And I'm mega bullish on the backdrop of sovereign debt issues and big boy capital saying, I want money that's outside the system. I've watched this thing that I thought was a tinker toy object, and it's continued to survive for this 14 years. And I realized that it's not a tinker toy anymore. It's for grown-ups and time to put big boy money in.
Right.
And we're going to see God candles and all sorts of things. And I think the biggest thing that we as a Bitcoin community need to be prepared for is, and I lived in the Silicon Valley area and witnessed this firsthand shortly after the dot-com era, is being humble amidst having lots of money.
Yep.
Because a lot of people just have lots of money, and new money treats that influx of capital very differently than old money does.
Yep.
You see old money tend to have a much more like measured pace to how they spend and what they spend on than new money. And I think that we're going to see some pretty interesting things from Bitcoiners if this bullishness does come to pass. And it'll be nice when we get past that immature level of monetary expenditure and get more serious. But I'm anticipating that in the next cycle as well.
Yeah, I tend to share that belief. Certainly the mega bullishness, given everything that's sort of coming together, particularly on kind of the demand side, as you said, this sort of big boy capital. And I tend to also fall into the camp of cycle maximalist. And there's the whole debate around, well, are we truly going to continue to see diminishing returns, or are we going to see the opposite and bucking that trend with the fact that arguably the FTX, the China mining ban, arguably suppressed the last one. So it'll be interesting to see. Nonetheless, I respect you for not throwing numbers around, but I think I wholeheartedly agree with the direction of what you're anticipating. Well, let's switch gears a little bit. I think you guys have a pretty interesting and fairly unique model from my standpoint, but maybe talk a little bit about Sazmining. What makes you guys kind of stand out within the industry, and what's the overall sort of philosophy behind the company as it relates to Bitcoin mining?
Yeah, I think let me start with the philosophy first. So it's when Will and I raised the capital to make this business model happen, it was really a reaction to we raised capital for self-mining operations and realized it wasn't enough capital to accomplish that. So what could we do with the capital? And we just thought back, we were consulting at that point in time. This is 2021, the first half of the year, and clients were asking for access to mining, and we were watching the incredible trajectory of Compass mining at that point in time, and we just said, look, given my chops in rooftop solar, where we were deploying like hundreds of solar systems in 9 different built environments across the U.S., which there's literally hundreds of pieces that go into each construction project, piercing somebody's weatherproof membrane on the top of their roof. It seemed a lot logistically a lot more simple to be able to throw out a hosting play. But the thesis we had is that we've learned and discovered over time as we keep peeling the layers back on this model is at the end of the day, this is just simply the best way to acquire Bitcoin. It's the best way to acquire Bitcoin because one, it's how the network was designed, and two, it's cheaper than going to an exchange. The problem is that our space has been plagued with counterparties that have not been good operators in the space.
Yep.
And that has certainly haunted us as we've come to market. I can't tell you how many folks have just told us outright that we're a scam and watch out for these guys. They're going to rug you. And, the only, I've just sort of come to accept that it's like, okay, just put your head down and build. And eventually, if you build it, they will come. Has been the idea, but I actually think that it's been a bit of a blot on the entire Bitcoin ecosystem because there's so many people that want to mine out there. They would prefer it. It's cheaper, but it's lacked the operational excellence to
Yep.
support that desired demand. And so what I see is, as we emerge during this bull market and continue to deliver on operational excellence, that we're going to flip a paradigm and actually unlock capital that has been locked on the sidelines, scared of going through exchanges and price volatility as a result. Because if you look at it, through mining, you're skipping the exchanges and you're DCAing the Bitcoin native way into your position. What does that do? That removes all the price volatility. Yes, there's a different counterparty risk, so absolutely, but it's an entire idea set that has not been in the public domain and readily accessible. And so people think that the only way they can acquire Bitcoin easily is going to an exchange. And we're here trying to challenge that paradigm and are challenging that paradigm so that people can have a better experience. Because I've never acquired Bitcoin in a way, and I mine using our platform just like all of our other clients. And I've never experienced an easier way to acquire Bitcoin than through our platform. And I say that having tried my hand at trading, selling entrepreneurial services, trying to mine at home myself. It's just like, I mean, this is the best experience. So let's try to give it to more people. So if I just pull back a step, actually, I've been thinking a lot lately about how biomimicry is something that I think Bitcoiners should embrace or understand the concept of more, which is basically when we mimic that which is in nature, we tend to create the most long-lasting products and services in the marketplace. And I think arguably the Bitcoin network is one example of that. You can see mycelium networks. You can see all sorts of other network type behavior, the roots of a forest. Intertwining, for instance, right? But networks are this resilient force, and Bitcoin network has fallen that biomimicry. And when you look at that and you just say, okay, what has occurred in our history in the past that's most analogous? It's the gold rush, right? Of the 1800s. And during that gold rush, yes, a lot of gold miners became very, very rich and wealthy by going out and mining gold. But the brand that stood the test of time was Levi's, not the gold miners.
Yep.
And so if we can come in and provide the goods and services to help other people be successful with their gold mining operation, well, shoot, like let's just do that, and then we don't have to compete trying to go after the Bitcoin directly ourselves. So our business model is unique, right? We don't have a margin built in for mining rigs. We don't have a margin built in for, the electricity rate. Instead, we take a percentage of the block reward on the back end. And that means that our profit margin is totally transparent, just like the Bitcoin network. It also means that our incentives with our clients are perfectly aligned because now we care about uptime. Now we care about how quickly their units are deployed. Now we care about how maintenance issues are resolved and how quickly they're resolved. So we think in the long run, actually, that the market is going to wind up coalescing on this type of a incentive for or this type of a revenue model for a hosting type of play. So we just think we're kind of leading the pack between that business model and developing software, which so far we're the first that I can see in the world that is focused on the average Joe having a great software experience with the UI UX, simple way to buy your mining rigs, watch your performance and the output, see all the transactions on chain as they're flowing out. And how is the ROI of your operation going? And we've delivered that, and so far it's been fairly well accepted with good Trustpilot reviews. And yeah, I will now get off my hobby horse and quit pounding my chest about size mining. But obviously, I'm proud of what
Uh,
we've done.
well, I want to bring folks on that I think have a unique perspective on some of this stuff. And just to double click on that business model, that's a huge deal. So for folks listening that have maybe looked into some of this stuff, that's a big deal. What Kent said, right? You're not making the profit on the machines themselves. You're not even making it on the hosting. It's really where you're making your money is on the actual rewards that the machines are generating. That's such a big deal. We mentioned one of the behemoths earlier, and I don't want to throw shade at any companies in this space, but I will speak from personal experience when I think it's valuable for folks to be aware of. A couple buddies of mine and I, had some machines with Compass, and there were periods where that was great, right? It was a fine experience. But there were other periods where that was not the case. And, that monetization model is completely different. There was no incentive to really hold that operational excellence to a massively high standard and keep the uptime. So, we had tons of downtime. We had to, ultimately ship the machines elsewhere. And so, it was not a very good experience. So I just really want to, again, without throwing shade at others, emphasize the uniqueness of that business model. I think that's really, really impressive. And then the transparency of the software that you guys provide is also, as far as I'm aware, a leader in the industry. And so those, I think, are two, huge differentiators, as you said. And to your point on this kind of Bitcoin native acquisition vehicle, I've personally done the math at various times across the cycle, right? If we're trying to compute, like, what is the way to stack the most sats, either market buying, I have a pot of fiat. I either market buy the amount of Bitcoin that I can, or I invest into mining, right? Like, which of those approaches gives me the most sats? Like, if that's the optimization function that I think a lot of people are kind of, working by, it is typically pointing to mining. And that's even before accounting for some of the pitfalls of traditional exchanges that you started to mention. So I would agree with you, in that regard. What are you excited about? Maybe before we get into the kind of the Joltz partnership, what are you excited about with Sazmining next? You guys, I think, just had a huge deployment in Paraguay, if I'm not mistaken. How's that going? What's sort of exciting coming down the pipeline for you guys heading into next year?
Yeah, so I think first, just to tack on to a couple points that you made, I think that I was shocked, right? Because I sort of had stuck in my head when I got into this space that mining wasn't as accessible. And it's not if you're an average person trying to do it at home. And that nuanced point, I think, stopped me at the front door of Bitcoin mining for far too long.
Yep.
But if you can get access to low enough power prices, then it makes absolute sense. And to put this in perspective, it took a little while to get to the point of just figuring out, hey, what is our clients cost to mine a Bitcoin with us, and how does that compare to an exchange? So we offer two mining rigs, and of those two mining rigs, I won't get into the technical specs. One's more efficient, and the other is a better price, right? Just that's kind of the two offerings that we've got. And out of those two mining rigs, right now, I just calculated for an investor yesterday, the cost to mine a Bitcoin with us, so this is not a forward-looking projection, it's just the cost today, is 18.8K and 22K, respectively, right? So why are people going to an exchange when you can get your Bitcoin at, theoretically 50% off?
Right.
Granted, there's a time delay to get up and installing mining, but I was literally putting these numbers together for an investor to just show, look, there is an inherent incentive for people to mine over going to an exchange. And I think this is back to that point about why hash rate is going up,
Yep.
why that's occurring. The other data point that I wanted to share is we actually did an analysis exactly like what you said, saying, okay, I've got capital now. Why don't I look at putting that same capital into a mining rig and buying Bitcoin? And if you did that, we went back to, I think, 2013, 2014, and through 2022. If you had purchased the latest gen mining rig and plugged it in and started mining with it until it through its like typical useful for your life, or you bought Bitcoin, what you would see is you would have generated about 50 times more Bitcoin. Not 50 times more Bitcoin, 50 more Bitcoin
Okay.
than if you want and purchased it. And it was like a 260% increase
Wow.
or ROI increase. And, I think it's just been technically difficult to do, which is why like the internet really didn't take off, right? When we were using a command line interface, we needed the browsers. And, that's kind of what Sazmining is trying to deliver here is that browser. So as far as what we're excited about in the future, there's some things that I would rather deliver before sharing like really what's coming down the pike. I'm just not a big fan of, hey, we're going to deliver this and then we're going to announce it and then we're going to announce it
Yeah.
again. Like
Announcement to the
let's
announcement.
bring it to
Yeah.
the market. Yeah, I'm not big into the Justin Sun approach to announcements. So, but what I will say is that we've scaled our business through the bear market with a bare bones team that is just kick ass. I couldn't be more proud of the guys that I work with, and we've bubble gum and baling wired this thing together. We're at a point where we need to go into our code, make some scalability adjustments, and that's going to take us a little while, but we'll improve the performance of what we've built over time, as well as deliver on some operational features that we've promised. There's the billing cycle is non-trivial when you're dealing with
Yep.
lots of clients.
Yep.
And actually, I think that that's been a sticking point for a lot of players in our industry. So we've done a lot of custom code to be able to measure. It's not even trivial to figure out how much electricity a mining rig consumes. It sounds easy to do, but in order to actually physically measure that, you need to have specific hardware in place. And so we figured out some clever ways to do it by cross-referencing through our monitoring solution and the mining pool, what uptime has been. And so we can get very accurate cost estimates, but delivering some operational excellence there. But really, that's kind of the name of the game right now. We're
Yep.
shifting gears into more of a bull market phase. It's time for us to get our foundation really well set. That way, the influx of demand we know is coming.
Yep.
We can absorb it and continue to deliver operational excellence.
No, I love that, and I think respect the acknowledgement of where you're continuing to build, because I think that's super important and is going to position you guys well, and that whole mission of sort of democratizing access to Bitcoin mining, which I think is a mission that has been shared by many entities, but at least from my vantage point, this is this seems like the model to actually deliver on that. I'm very optimistic to see how you guys do in this next cycle. And maybe just to round out the discussion, we're obviously super pumped to be partnering with you guys at Joltz. What do you think kind of Bitcoin Rewards does for the business? Maybe give folks a feel of how you guys are incorporating some of that into the business.
I think we are just at the point where the fruits of our labor for building a software-based solution can really start to be leveraged. And we see Jolts as one of those first plays, right? So we what we found is we grow best by allowing a reputation to speak for itself and allowing word of mouth to get out there. And what that means is that a lot of our clients have wanted to be affiliates, and we've had a fiat-based affiliate program in place. And a lot of our affiliates have said, gosh, I'd be much more motivated if this were SATs. And so we said, okay, I think it was Stephen, your partner in crime there that
Right.
approached me and had a great conversation. I said, yeah, let's lean into this. And so that's where we're in the process of getting built out. And so shifting away from our fiat-based affiliate approach so that people can earn sats back, because oddly enough, like, Gresham's law really does seem to apply. Loosely speaking, it seems like people value sats at about 5x what the dollar figure is for those
Fascinating.
those sats. It's pretty interesting to see. So we also get more bang for our buck with the funds that we're spending by having this in place. But I think most importantly about this is it represents, from my vantage point, us leveraging the cheat code of Bitcoin and leaning into the Jolts community, which we're fans of, and allowing like the network impacts of Bitcoin company to Bitcoin company to compound gains for both organizations. And there's a few other companies like that we're we've got conversations with. But yeah, I think you're going to see us leaning a lot more into that Bitcoin cheat code in the next year to integrate more into the Bitcoin ecosystem. And again, back to this odd to us strength that we are developing, because we're the only ones developing software. It's sort of allowing us to build out our moat as a result of these integrations, because just simply nobody else has them.
Yeah, no, I again, back to that, point around not just the transparency into being able to see your performance in a way that I don't think is as accessible through other providers, having this kind of repertoire of different tools and other integrations that you're packing in. I think that's a really unique part of it. And we're thrilled to be along for the ride. So I know referrals are coming very soon. But Kent, this has been a terrific discussion. Where can folks go to get signed up? I think it's the hosting model done right. Not easy to do. And so the years that you guys have spent building this up, I think is very much to be commended. But where can folks go to either learn more or register and get signed up for Sazmining?
Well, first of all, thank you for the kind words. It's nice to be validated by other Bitcoiners, and I appreciate that. We do think that we're onto something
Yep.
unique and special and seemingly obvious to us, but it takes market showing up to validate that. And for anybody that wants to participate, join us. Sazmining.com is the website. I'm sure it'll be included in the links to the show notes here.
Yep.
And then I can be found probably most accessible on Twitter still at K Halliburton. I'm not going to try to recite my in pub for Noster here. Yeah, I can be found over there as well. Would love to be able to deliver on this promise of just making mining accessible to the masses, sort of as I see Satoshi design the network to originally function and distribute the Bitcoin.
Yeah, and as you said, we'll definitely put all the information in the description down below. But it has been fun, my friend. We'll have to have you on again in the future. But for now, we'll go ahead and leave this here. Thanks again, Kent. We'll see you real soon.
Yeah, thanks so much for the opportunity to talk with your community. Appreciate it, Ian.
Awesome. All right, guys.